The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Zekthar of the Vorthak Empire walked into the circular room with his head held high. His blue-scaled skin gleamed under the artificial lights as he took his place at the speaking platform. Around him sat representatives from dozens of alien species, all watching him with curious eyes. Zekthar had called this emergency session for one reason. The humans were expanding too fast. Their colonies were spreading across space like a disease. Something had to be done to show them their place in the galaxy. The young species needed to learn respect for their betters. Council Speaker Morden, an ancient being with gray tentacles, activated the session recording device. Ambassador Zekthar, you have requested urgent council time. State your business. Zekthar straightened his military uniform and began to speak. Fellow council members, the human expansion threatens the natural order of our galaxy. They claim systems without permission. They ignore established trade routes. They act as if they own space itself. A few council members nodded in agreement. Others remained silent. The humans had been members of the Galactic Council for only 50 years. Most species still saw them as newcomers who needed guidance. What do you propose? Asked Representative Felnox from the Centauri Alliance. A demonstration of power, Zekthar replied with a cold smile. One swift strike against a human colony. Nothing too large. Just enough to remind them that they are not alone in this galaxy. The chamber fell silent. Several alien representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Finally, the old archivist Keeper Yilmoth spoke from the back of the room. His voice was barely a whisper, but everyone could hear him clearly. The archives contain warnings about such actions, Yilmoth said slowly. Ancient records left by the architects before they vanished. They studied the humans long ago. Zekthar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the chamber walls. The architects disappeared 2,000 years ago. Their warnings are dust and legend. Besides, what could primitives from a backwater planet possibly do to the might of the Vorthak Empire? Yilmoth's old eyes grew sad. The records say many things about humans. They do not forgive. They do not forget. They will find you no matter where you hide. The architects called them the galaxy's memory keepers. Fairy tales, Zekthar snorted. The humans have no special powers. They are flesh and bone like the rest of us. Their ships are adequate, but nothing exceptional. Their weapons are standard military grade. I see no reason to fear them. The archivist tried again. The warnings speak of something deeper, something in human nature that other species do not possess, a quality that makes them dangerous beyond their technology. But Zekthar had already made up his mind. He had come here not to ask permission, but to inform the council of his intentions. The Vorthak fleet was already moving toward human space. Admiral Korth had hand-picked the target weeks ago. Meanwhile, billions of miles away in human space, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the UES Sentinel. His ship was conducting routine patrol near the outer colonies. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the life support systems. Navigation Officer Ben Carter looked up from his console. Captain, we're approaching the New Haven system. All scans show normal activity. Morrison nodded. New Haven was one of humanity's newer colonies, home to about 15,000 people. Most were farmers and miners who had come to build a new life among the stars. It was a peaceful place where children played in the streets and families gathered for evening meals. Take us into standard orbit, Morrison ordered. Let's check in with the colony administrators. On the planet's surface, Commander Lisa Rodriguez was finishing her shift at the defense station. New Haven's shields were mainly for protection against space debris and solar storms. The colony had never faced a real military threat. Most of the defense equipment was old and designed for emergencies that never came. Rodriguez was about to head home to her small apartment when her communications console lit up with warning signals. Long-range sensors had detected multiple ships approaching at high speed. The readings showed vessels much larger than typical merchant ships or transport craft. She opened a channel to the colony's governor. Sir, we have unknown ships approaching our system. They're not responding to standard greeting protocols. Governor Paul Hayes was eating dinner with his family when the call came through. He excused himself from the table and walked to his private office. How many ships, Commander? 15 large vessels, possibly warships. They'll reach our system in about 2 hours at current speed. Hayes felt a chill run down his spine. New Haven had no enemies that he knew of. The colony minded its own business and traded peacefully with all species. Try to contact them again. Offer them safe harbor if they need repairs or supplies. but the approaching ships maintained their silence as they entered the New Haven system. Admiral Korth stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the human colony through his viewing screen. The planet looked green and peaceful, perfect for his purposes. "Begin the attack," he ordered his weapons officer. The first energy blasts struck New Haven's outer settlements without warning. Farms that had taken years to build vanished in seconds. The colony's shields activated automatically, but they were designed for natural threats, not military weapons. Commander Rodriguez watched in horror as the readings flooded her screen. The attack was massive and coordinated. She activated the colony's emergency broadcast system and began sending distress signals to every human ship in the sector. "This is New Haven colony under attack by unknown alien forces. Multiple casualties reported. Shields failing. Request immediate assistance from any human vessels in range." Captain Morrison received the transmission while his ship was still 2 hours away. The bridge crew listened in stunned silence as Rodriguez's voice crackled through the speakers, describing the destruction of homes and the deaths of innocent colonists. "Maximum speed to New Haven," Morrison ordered, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Send word to Fleet Command. Tell them what's happening." Ben Carter's hands flew over his navigation controls, calculating the fastest route to the embattled colony. As he worked, he also began running calculations for something else. Jump coordinates to every known Vorthak world and military installation. He stored the data in a secure file and marked it for priority transmission to Fleet Intelligence. Back on New Haven, the attack continued for 3 hours. When it finally stopped, most of the colony lay in ruins. Thousands of people were dead or missing. The survivors huddled in emergency shelters, waiting for rescue that might never come. Commander Rodriguez transmitted one final message before the defense station's power failed completely. Her voice was calm despite the destruction around her. "To any human forces receiving this transmission, remember us. Remember what happened here today. Make them pay for what they have done to our people." The transmission ended in static. Admiral Korth ordered his fleet to withdraw, satisfied with their work. They had delivered their message clearly. The humans would think twice before expanding too aggressively in the future. But as the Vorthak ships jumped away from the New Haven system, they left behind something they had not expected. Every human vessel within 50 light years had received the distress signals. Every captain, every crew member, every military commander now knew exactly who had attacked the innocent colonists. The warnings in the ancient archives began to stir like dust in a tomb. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to harm human beings. 6 months had passed since the destruction of New Haven colony. Admiral Korth sat in his comfortable office on the Vorthak military world of Zephyria, reviewing reports from across the Empire. The attack on the human settlement had achieved exactly what he intended. The humans had grown quiet, their expansion slowing noticeably. But something else was happening in Vorthak space, something that made Korth frown as he read through the daily briefings. 3 cargo ships had vanished near the outer rim last week. A communication relay station had gone dark 2 days ago. Most troubling of all, an entire patrol fleet had missed its scheduled check-in. Korth called his intelligence officer into the office. Commander Vextel entered and saluted sharply. "You wanted to see me, Admiral?" "These missing ships and stations," Korth said, pointing to the reports on his desk. "What do we know about them?" Vextel shifted uncomfortably. "Very little, sir. The cargo ships simply disappeared from our tracking systems. No distress signals, no debris fields, nothing. The communication relay shows signs of systematic shutdown, but we found no evidence of who was responsible." "And the patrol fleet?" "Missing for 4 days now, Admiral. We sent a search team to their last known position. They found empty space where our ships should have been." Korth leaned back in his chair. Pirates sometimes attacked lone vessels, but they rarely had the firepower to destroy military patrols. "Could this be the work of our enemies?" "The hegemony, perhaps." "Unlikely, sir. The missing assets are scattered across different sectors. No single enemy force could cover that much territory simultaneously." Deep in space, far from any Vorthak patrol routes, Colonel Amy Sullivan studied the holographic display in her command center. The converted asteroid base was hidden in a dead system, invisible to standard sensors. Around her, dozens of human officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Sullivan had been a regular military officer before New Haven. She commanded a destroyer in the 3rd Fleet and followed orders without question. But when the reports came in about the colony massacre, something changed inside her. The military's official response felt too slow, too measured, too political. She had resigned her commission and disappeared into the shadows of space. Within weeks, she had gathered others who felt the same way. Veterans who could not sleep after seeing the footage from New Haven. Engineers who wanted to put their skills to better use. Intelligence officers who knew where to find the information they needed. They called themselves the Human Retribution Fleet, though they operated without any official authority. Their ships bore no markings and followed no regulations except their own. Their mission was simple: make the Vorthak pay for what they had done. "Report," Sullivan ordered as she walked between the workstations. Sergeant Tony Miller looked up from his technical console. Before New Haven, he had been a xenotechnology specialist studying alien ship designs. Now he used that knowledge for a different purpose. "We've successfully infiltrated 3 more Vorthak manufacturing facilities. Their security systems are surprisingly easy to hack once you understand their programming language." Dr. Kate Johnson turned from her biological analysis station. She had spent years studying alien physiology for medical research. Now she focused on finding weaknesses that could be exploited in combat. "I've completed my analysis of Vorthak atmospheric requirements. Their ships maintain a specific gas mixture that becomes toxic if you alter the nitrogen levels by just 2%. Sullivan nodded approvingly. "Excellent work. What about our field operations?" Communications Officer Rachel Stone activated her main display screen. Before the war, she had been a translator working with alien diplomatic missions. Her language skills made her invaluable for intercepting enemy transmissions. "Our teams have successfully eliminated 6 Vorthak installations in the past month. We've also placed monitoring devices on 7 of their major trade routes. The Retribution Fleet had perfected a new kind of warfare. They did not fight like traditional military forces with large battles and territorial objectives. Instead, they struck like shadows, appearing without warning and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Every attack was carefully planned and precisely executed. Captain Jake Morrison's ship had undergone similar changes. The UES Sentinel no longer flew patrol missions or followed standard fleet orders. Morrison had requested special assignment status after witnessing the ruins of New Haven. His crew had volunteered to join him on what everyone knew was a one-way mission. They existed now for one purpose only. Navigator Ben Carter had memorized the location of every Vorthak facility, every ship route, every hidden base that intelligence could identify. He tracked enemy movements with the patience of a hunter watching prey. Engineering Chief Danny Walsh had a different role in their mission. While Carter plotted courses and Morrison planned attacks, Walsh worked undercover in Vorthak territory. His knowledge of alien technology allowed him to pose as a freelance engineer, seeking work in their shipyards and manufacturing centers. For 3 months, Walsh had moved from facility to facility, carefully sabotaging critical systems. He would spend weeks at each location, earning trust and learning procedures. Then he would introduce subtle flaws into their production lines. Ships would suffer mysterious power failures weeks after leaving the yards. Weapons systems would malfunction during routine training exercises. The Vorthak military was beginning to notice these problems, but they could not identify the source. Their engineers found evidence of sabotage, but the methods were too sophisticated for any known criminal organization. Whoever was responsible understood Vorthak technology better than most of their own technicians. General Vexmore commanded the Vorthak Home Defense Fleet. He had served in the military for 40 years and considered himself an expert on galactic security threats, but the recent pattern of attacks and disappearances puzzled him. "Completely. Show me the damage assessment from the Kepler Station incident," he ordered his aide. The young officer activated a holographic display, showing the remains of what had once been a major supply depot. The station was not destroyed in the usual sense. Instead, it had been systematically dismantled piece by piece. Every valuable component had been removed, every data core wiped clean, every crew member vanished without a trace. "This level of precision suggests professional military training," Vexmore muttered. "But which species has the capability to conduct such operations in our territory without detection?" His aide hesitated before answering. "General, our intelligence division has identified some disturbing patterns in the attacks. The methods used are consistent with human military doctrine. Vexmore laughed dismissively. Impossible. The humans are barely capable of defending their own colonies. We proved that at New Haven. With respect, sir, perhaps we underestimated their response capabilities. The general's laughter died away as he considered this possibility. The humans had been quiet since New Haven, but what if that silence meant something different than what they assumed? What if the humans were not cowering in fear but instead preparing for war? Back at the Retribution Fleet Base, Colonel Sullivan received a priority transmission from one of their deep cover agents. The message was brief but significant. Danny Walsh had successfully infiltrated the main Vorthak military shipyard and discovered something important. The enemy was planning a second attack on human space. This time they intended to target multiple colonies simultaneously, hoping to force humanity into complete submission. The attack was scheduled to begin in 30 days. Sullivan gathered her senior staff around the tactical display. Ladies and gentlemen, our intelligence sources confirm that the Vorthak are preparing for another massacre. They believe they can frighten us into surrender by killing more innocent people. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. They had spent months conducting covert operations against military targets, but the enemy was planning to attack civilians again. "What are your orders, Colonel?" asked Tony Miller. Sullivan's expression grew cold and determined. "We're going to show them what happens when you threaten human families. It's time to stop playing in the shadows. We're going to bring this war directly to their doorstep." The hunt was about to become something much more dangerous. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn why the ancient warnings had been written in the first place. The Galactic Council emergency session was unlike anything the Chamber had ever witnessed. Representatives from 47 species filled their seats, all speaking at once in a cacophony of alien languages. The translation devices struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. Council Speaker Mordun activated the silence field, forcing quiet throughout the room. "Order will be maintained during this session. Ambassador Zekthar, your empire requested this meeting. Explain the situation." Zekthar stood at the speaking platform, but he looked nothing like the confident warrior who had dismissed the ancient warnings months ago. His blue scales had lost their shine and his military uniform hung loose on his frame. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights spent studying casualty reports. "Honored council members," he began with a voice that trembled slightly. "The Vorthak Empire faces an unprecedented threat. In the past 2 months, we have lost contact with 17 star systems. 43 military installations have been destroyed or abandoned. Our merchant fleet has been reduced by 60%. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. The Vorthak Empire controlled nearly 100 star systems and commanded one of the galaxy's largest military forces. How could they suffer such losses so quickly? Who is responsible for these attacks?" asked Representative Felnox. Zekthar hesitated before answering. "We believe it is the humans." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several representatives stood up from their seats, speaking over each other in disbelief. The humans were still considered a minor species by most of the galaxy. Their military was small compared to the great powers. Ambassador Helen Burke stood up from her seat in the human delegation section. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Before becoming a diplomat, she had served in human military intelligence for 20 years. "The human delegation requests permission to address the council," she said in a clear voice that carried across the chamber. Mordun gestured for her to approach the speaking platform. Zekthar reluctantly moved aside, his eyes never leaving Burke as she walked past him. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who held all the cards in a deadly game. "Fellow council members," Burke began, 6 months ago, the Vorthak Empire launched an unprovoked attack against New Haven Colony. 15,000 human civilians died in that assault, including women and children who had never harmed anyone. She activated a holographic display showing images from New Haven after the attack. The footage was devastating. Burned homes, destroyed schools, families searching through rubble for missing loved ones. Even the alien representatives who had seen many wars looked uncomfortable watching the scenes. The Vorthak leadership believed this attack would intimidate humanity into submission, Burke continued. They were wrong. What they actually did was awaken something in human nature that your species have never encountered before. Burke walked slowly around the platform as she spoke, making eye contact with representatives throughout the chamber. Humans have a quality that makes us different from other species. When someone hurts our people, we do not simply seek justice. We seek total accountability. She activated another display, this one showing star charts of Vorthak space. Red markers indicated destroyed installations and missing ships. The pattern was clear and methodical, like a disease spreading through their territory. Every Vorthak military base, every ship, every hidden facility is known to us. Burke said matter-of-factly, "We have been studying your empire for decades, learning your weaknesses, mapping your territories, understanding your capabilities. What happened at New Haven simply gave us permission to use that knowledge." The chamber had grown completely silent. Even the translation devices had stopped their constant humming. Zekthar stared at Burke in growing horror as he realized what she was telling them. "You have been spying on us for decades?" he asked. Burke smiled coldly. "Ambassador Zekthar, we have been spying on everyone for decades. The difference is that most species have not given us a reason to act on that information. In a secure military facility, on the human world of Titan, Major Chris Evans studied the holographic battlefield display with intense concentration. His mission was the most dangerous operation ever attempted by human forces. Intelligence had finally located the Vorthak Empire's most closely guarded secret. The Vorthak homeworld of Kethvar had been hidden from galactic knowledge for centuries. Even their own people knew its location only through heavily encrypted navigation data. But human intelligence had spent months breaking those codes and tracking supply shipments back to their source. Evans commanded a team of 12 specialists, each chosen for skills that would be essential for the mission. Lieutenant Sam Parker was their demolitions expert, capable of disabling any security system ever built. Sergeant Maria Santos handled long-range reconnaissance with sniper skills that bordered on the supernatural. "Final briefing," Evans announced to his team as they gathered around the tactical display. "Our objective is to infiltrate Kethvar and plant monitoring devices in their central command facility. This will give us real-time access to all Vorthak military communications." The mission was effectively a suicide run. Kethvar was protected by multiple defense platforms, patrol fleets, and atmospheric shields. Even if they succeeded in reaching the planet's surface, extraction would be nearly impossible. Lieutenant Parker studied the mission parameters on his datapad. "Major, the odds of completing this mission and returning alive are approximately 3%. Evans looked at each member of his team. These were volunteers who had lost friends and family at New Haven. They understood the stakes and accepted the risks. "Anyone who wants to withdraw from this mission can do so now with no questions asked." Nobody moved. Parker closed his datapad and looked directly at Evans. "Sir, the people who died at New Haven deserve better than 3% odds. Let's make this count." Meanwhile, deep in Vorthak space, Admiral Korth had abandoned his comfortable office on Zephyria and retreated to a heavily fortified bunker on an unnamed moon. The facility was designed to withstand direct assault from capital ships, but Korth no longer felt safe anywhere in his own territory. His intelligence reports painted a picture that defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. The humans were not fighting like any species in recorded galactic history. They did not seek to capture territory or demand surrender. Instead, they seemed focused on completely destroying the Vorthak Empire's ability to function as a civilization. "Status report," he demanded from his communications officer. "Sir, we have lost contact with our forces in the 7th sector. Long-range scans show no signs of our installations there. The humans appear to have eliminated everything." Korth studied the tactical display showing his empire's territory. Red zones now covered more than half of their space, areas where Vorthak forces no longer existed. The humans were moving through their territory like a slow-burning fire, consuming everything in their path. "Have we received any response to our surrender offers?" he asked desperately. The communications officer shook his head. "No, sir. The humans have not responded to any of our diplomatic attempts. They continue their operations as if our messages do not exist." Back on Titan, Major Evans and his team were making final preparations for the infiltration mission. Their ship was a prototype stealth vessel designed specifically for deep penetration operations. It could avoid most sensor systems, but success would depend more on timing and luck than technology. Evans sealed his combat armor and checked his equipment one last time. Every member of his team carried enough firepower to level a city block, but their primary weapon was the information they would gather. Knowledge of Vorthak command structures, defense protocols, and strategic planning would be invaluable for future operations. Remember, Evans told his team as they boarded the stealth ship, our mission is intelligence gathering, not combat. We get in, plant the monitoring devices, and get out. No unnecessary risks. But as their ship departed toward Vorthak space, everyone aboard understood that Lieutenant Parker had volunteered for something more than intelligence gathering. His personal mission parameters included options that the official briefing had not mentioned. If extraction became impossible, he would ensure that the Vorthak homeworld remembered why humans should never be underestimated. The ancient warnings were proving themselves true with each passing day. Humanity's memory was long and their patience was infinite. The Vorthak Empire was learning what it meant to be hunted by a species that would never stop, never forgive, and never allow their enemies to escape the consequences of their actions. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans played by different rules than everyone else. 2 years had passed since the destruction of New Haven Colony, and the Vorthak Empire had ceased to exist in any meaningful way. What had once been a mighty civilization spanning 100 star systems was now reduced to scattered groups of refugees hiding in the deepest corners of space. Admiral Korth sat alone in his bunker, staring at reports that told the same story over and over again. Another outpost destroyed, another fleet vanished, another colony evacuated in panic. The humans had systematically erased his people from the galaxy with methodical precision. The bunker's communication system activated with an incoming message. Korth recognized the voice of his former intelligence chief, Commander Vextal, though the transmission was weak and filled with static. Admiral, this may be my final report. Vextal's voice crackled through the speakers. The humans have found our refugee camps in the Outer Rim. They are not taking prisoners. I estimate we have perhaps 300 ships left in all of space. 300 ships from what had once been the galaxy's third largest fleet. Korth closed his eyes and tried to remember when he had felt confident about attacking a small human colony. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Meanwhile, on the human world of Mars, Commander Lisa Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic display showing the current status of Operation Remembrance. She had survived the attack on New Haven by hiding in the colony's emergency bunker, and now she led the final phase of humanity's response. Rodriguez had spent 2 years planning this moment. Every surviving colonist from New Haven had been given a role in the operation. Governor Paul Hayes now commanded intelligence operations. Engineer Danny Walsh had returned from his undercover work to lead the technical assault teams. Even the children who had lost their parents were old enough now to contribute to the mission. Status report from all teams, Rodriguez ordered, the holographic display updated with information from across the galaxy. Red markers showed the locations of remaining Vorthak strongholds. Blue markers indicated human forces moving to intercept them. Green markers represented completed objectives where Vorthak presence had been eliminated entirely. Lieutenant Alex Turner looked up from his demolitions console. He had been a construction worker on New Haven before the attack, building homes for families who would never live in them. Now he used those same skills to tear down everything the Vorthak had ever built. All charges are placed at the Zephyria command bunker, Turner reported. We can bring down their entire military headquarters on your command. Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her sniper rifle's scope as she studied the target through her position overlooking the bunker entrance. She had been a school teacher on New Haven, helping children learn to read. Now she specialized in making sure Vorthak commanders never got the chance to hurt anyone else's students. I have clear sight lines on all exit points, Santos confirmed. No one leaves that facility without our permission. Rodriguez felt a grim satisfaction as she watched the tactical display. The Vorthak leadership had made their final mistake by gathering in one location. They thought the heavily fortified bunker would protect them from human vengeance. They were wrong. Begin the final assault, she ordered. The attack on the Zephyria bunker was unlike anything in military history. The human forces did not try to capture the facility or negotiate with its occupants. They simply began the systematic process of opening every sealed door, disabling every defense system, and accounting for every person inside. Admiral Korth heard the explosions getting closer as the humans worked their way through the bunker's outer defenses. His hands shook as he tried to activate the emergency communication system one last time. This is Admiral Korth of the Vorthak Empire, he broadcast on all frequencies. We surrender unconditionally. We offer complete reparations for our attack on New Haven Colony. We will accept any terms you demand. The response came immediately through the bunker's communication system. The voice belonged to a human female, calm and professional. Admiral Korth, this is Admiral Patricia Foster of the Human Defense Force. Your surrender is noted but not accepted. Korth felt his blood turn cold. What do you mean not accepted? We are willing to make amends for our actions. Admiral, you were warned before you attacked our people. The ancient records were clear about what would happen if you harmed human civilians. Escape will never be allowed. The bunker shook as another explosion echoed through the corridors. Korth could hear human voices getting closer, speaking in calm tones as they coordinated their advance. They sounded like technicians completing a routine maintenance task. Please, Korth begged into the communication system. My people are scattered across the galaxy. Most of them had nothing to do with the attack on your colony. Show mercy. Admiral Foster's voice remained emotionless. The children who died on New Haven had nothing to do with galactic politics either. Yet you killed them without hesitation. You have taught us that mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. The bunker's main door exploded inward with a thunderous crash. Human soldiers poured through the opening, their weapons ready but their faces showing no anger or excitement. They moved with the efficiency of people completing an unpleasant but necessary job. Commander Rodriguez entered the bunker's command center where Korth waited with his remaining staff. She looked older than her years, her face marked by the weight of everything she had witnessed and everything she had done in response. Admiral Korth, she said simply. You are the last. Korth stared at her in confusion. The last what? The last Vorthak military commander still alive in this galaxy. The words hit Korth like a physical blow. He thought of all the officers who had served under him, all the brave soldiers who had followed his orders. They were all gone now, erased from existence by a species he had dismissed as primitive. How many of my people survive? He asked in a whisper. Rodriguez consulted her datapad. Our intelligence estimates approximately 2,000 Vorthak civilians remain alive in various refugee camps. They will be relocated to the Andromeda Galaxy and given the resources to start over far from human space. And the military personnel? There are no Vorthak military personnel remaining except for you. Korth felt his legs give out beneath him. He collapsed into his command chair, finally understanding the true scope of what the humans had accomplished. They had not simply defeated the Vorthak Empire. They had methodically eliminated every person who had participated in or supported the attack on New Haven. The families of our soldiers, he said desperately. Surely you did not harm innocent families. Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. Admiral, we are not monsters. We made careful distinctions between combatants and non-combatants. Every person who participated in military operations against human civilians has been held accountable. Those who played no role in the attacks have been spared. But Korth was no longer listening. He was remembering a meeting from long ago in the Galactic Council chambers, when an old archivist had tried to warn him about something called the galaxy's memory keepers. He had laughed at those ancient warnings, dismissing them as fairy tales from a vanished species. Now he understood what the architects had been trying to tell future generations. Humans did not simply fight wars. They eliminated threats completely and permanently, ensuring that the same mistakes could never be repeated. What happens to me now? Korth asked. Rodriguez holstered her weapon and stepped back. You will be taken to New Haven Colony. But New Haven was destroyed. We rebuilt it, Rodriguez said quietly. Every building, every street, every memorial to the people who died there. You will live there for the rest of your natural life, maintaining the graves of the families you killed. You will remember their names and tend their memorials until the day you die. As Korth was led away by the human soldiers, he finally understood why the ancient warnings had been written. The galaxy had learned too late that some species should never be provoked, never be underestimated, and never be given a reason to remember your name. 5 years had passed since the last confirmed Vorthak warship had been destroyed in the depths of space. The galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace, but everyone knew that something fundamental had changed in the balance of power between species. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Sentinel Station, humanity's newest deep space monitoring facility. The massive structure orbited a dead star system that had once belonged to the Vorthak Empire. Now it served as the nerve center for the Eternal Vigil Protocol, humanity's promise that the hunt would never truly end. The station buzzed with constant activity as thousands of human personnel monitored every corner of the galaxy. Long-range sensors tracked the movement of every ship larger than a shuttle. Communication arrays intercepted transmissions in hundreds of alien languages. Computer systems analyzed patterns and behaviors, searching for any sign that Vorthak survivors might be regrouping somewhere in the vast darkness of space. Morrison walked through the main control center, observing the work being done at each station. Navigation Officer Ben Carter, now promoted to Admiral Carter, commanded the tracking division. His team followed the ion trails of refugee ships across light years of empty space, noting their destinations and monitoring their activities. Status report, Admiral, Morrison requested as he approached Carter's workstation. Carter activated his holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with thousands of tiny markers indicating tracked vessels. We currently monitor 237 Vorthak refugee ships in various sectors. Most have settled in remote systems far from major trade routes. A few are still moving, apparently searching for permanent homes. Morrison studied the display carefully. Each marker represented families and individuals who had lost everything because their leaders chose to attack human civilians. These were not soldiers or government officials, but ordinary people whose only crime was belonging to the wrong species at the wrong time. Any signs of military reorganization? Morrison asked. None whatsoever, Carter replied. Our deep cover agents report that the survivors show no interest in rebuilding military capabilities. Most are focused entirely on basic survival and starting new lives. This was exactly what human intelligence had expected. The systematic elimination of the Vorthak military command structure had been designed not just to end their current threat, but to ensure they could never pose a danger to anyone again. Without leaders, without resources, and without hope of revenge, the survivors had chosen to focus on peaceful rebuilding. In another section of the station, Engineering Chief Danny Walsh supervised the development of new hunter-seeker technologies. His team worked on improving the sensor systems that could track ships across interstellar distances and the stealth devices that allowed human vessels to observe targets without being detected. Walsh had returned from his undercover work among the Vorthak with invaluable knowledge about their technology and psychology. He understood how they thought, how they planned, and most importantly, how they might try to hide from human attention in the future. The new sensor array is ready for testing, Walsh reported to Morrison during their weekly briefing. We can now track engine signatures across distances that were previously impossible to monitor. Morrison nodded approvingly. Good. How long until we can deploy these systems throughout the galaxy? 6 months for full deployment, Admiral. Once online, we will have complete coverage of every major shipping lane and most remote systems. The technology was impressive, but Morrison knew that the real strength of the Eternal Vigil protocol was not in machines and computers. It was in the dedication of people who would never forget what happened at New Haven. The monitoring stations were staffed by volunteers who had lost friends and family in the attack. They worked with the quiet determination of people who understood that their job was preventing future tragedies. Dr. Kate Johnson ran the psychological analysis division from her laboratory deep within Sentinel Station. Her team studied the behavior patterns of Vorthak survivors, looking for signs that any of them might still harbor hostile intentions toward humanity. The psychological profiles remained consistent, Johnson reported during the monthly senior staff meeting. The survivors exhibit classic symptoms of a thoroughly defeated population. Depression, resignation, and complete loss of group identity. Most have abandoned their former names and adopted new identities in their refugee communities. This was perhaps the most telling evidence of how completely the Vorthak Empire had been broken. They were not simply hiding from human retaliation, but actively trying to forget that they had ever been part of the civilization that attacked New Haven. Any exceptions to this pattern? Morrison asked. Johnson consulted her notes. 3 individuals out of the entire survivor population show signs of persistent anger and resentment. However, our agents report that these individuals are shunned by their own communities. The other survivors seem to fear that any expression of hostility might bring human attention back to their hiding places. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime, the political implications of humanity's response continued to reshape interstellar relations. Ambassador Helen Burke sat at the human delegation table, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The Council had officially condemned the attack on New Haven and supported humanity's right to seek justice. But privately, many species remained deeply disturbed by the thoroughness of the human response. The complete elimination of the Vorthak military had sent a message that resonated far beyond the original conflict. Council Speaker Morden called the session to order. We gather today to discuss the final updates to the Galactic Security Protocols. Ambassador Burke, the human delegation, requested this discussion. Burke stood and approached the speaking platform, carrying herself with the same confident authority she had displayed during the height of the conflict. Honored Council members, humanity wishes to contribute our experience to the galaxy's security database. She activated a holographic display, showing the updated entry in the Council's threat assessment files. The old warnings about humanity had been completely rewritten, based on recent events. These new protocols will help prevent future tragedies by ensuring that all species understand the consequences of attacking civilian populations, Burke explained. The information is accurate and based on documented evidence from recent conflicts. The new warning was comprehensive and chilling in its precision. It described humanity's intelligence capabilities, their patience in planning responses, and their absolute refusal to accept partial justice. Most importantly, it explained that humans viewed attacks on their civilians as permanent injuries that could never be healed through negotiation or time. Representative Felnox raised his hand to speak. Ambassador Burke, these protocols suggest that humanity would respond to any attack with complete elimination of the aggressor species. Is this accurate? Burke considered the question carefully before answering. Representative Felnox, humanity has no interest in conquest or expansion through military force. We prefer peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit. However, if any species chooses to harm our people, they should understand that we will respond with whatever level of force is necessary to ensure it never happens again. The chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. Every species in the galaxy now understood that humanity operated by different rules than everyone else. They did not seek glory in battle or political advantage through war. They simply eliminated threats completely and permanently. As the council session ended, the old archivist Keeper Yilmoth approached Burke in the corridor outside the chamber. His ancient eyes held a mixture of sadness and respect. The architects would be proud, he said quietly. Their warnings have finally been proven true. Burke nodded respectfully to the old keeper. The warnings were never about pride, Keeper. They were about ensuring that future generations would not repeat the mistakes of the past. Deep in space, far beyond the edge of the galaxy, a single Vorthak refugee ship drifted through the cosmic void. Its crew believed they had finally found safety in the endless darkness between star systems. They had traveled for months to reach this empty region where no civilization had ever ventured. Captain Vexnall looked through the ship's viewing port at the distant stars of their former home. His family was aboard this vessel, along with 40 other survivors who had managed to escape the systematic destruction of their people. They had given up everything, abandoning their names, their culture, and their history in exchange for the chance to live. Perhaps we can finally rest here, Vexnall's mate said as she joined him at the viewing port. Surely the humans cannot find us in this emptiness. Vexnall wanted to believe her, but something deep in his mind whispered warnings about the species that had destroyed his civilization. He had read the reports from other refugee groups. Ships that thought they were safe had simply vanished one day, leaving no trace of their passage through space. The ship's communication system activated with an incoming transmission. The signal was weak but clear, transmitted on the emergency frequency that all Vorthak vessels monitored. The voice that spoke was calm and professional, with the accent of someone who had learned their language.